Okay, welcome to our PFFA Tuesday webinar. We are really lucky to have Patricia Baumann with us. She's really passionate about glyphosate and the impact on our health and on our environment, and is very knowledgeable in this area. I'm looking forward to hearing lots about this because I have to admit I'm quite naive, so I'm here to learn tonight. So thank you, Patricia. I'd also like to introduce Vicky as well. So Vicky works with us at the PFFA. She helps organise these webinars and does lots of other stuff in the background too. She's a really valuable member of the team, but Vicky is also a nutritional therapist. So Vicky, if you want to say hello, and then we can pass on over to Patricia.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Nice to be on this side of the camera. And I recognise some of the names from, I've been emailing some of you in response to questions, etc. So it's nice to see you all.
Thanks, Vicky. And Patricia, over to you to share your expertise and knowledge with us on glyphosate. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Sammy, for asking me to talk on these topics that, in my opinion, aren't getting talked about enough. So I've been talking about glutathione for about 8 years and glyphosate a little bit longer. But I am Patricia Baumann. You can tell by my accent, I'm not local. I've lived in the UK for about 26 years, originally from California, and I've lived in several places in the States. And I think this gives me real passion for wanting to share what I have with you tonight. Do feel free to take screenshots of my slides. And I encourage that because some of what I am sharing is sciencey. Very sciencey. I'm largely quoting Dr. Stephanie Seneff, her book called Toxic Legacy. She's an MIT professor and considered one of the world's foremost authorities on glyphosate. And at the end, if you're intrigued to want to know more, I've got a link for you to download and read her book for free for 30 days. I'm really just skimming the surface. So I've condensed her book down to about 30 minutes. And then I'll spend about 10 minutes on glutathione. I am not a scientist, but I do have a deep interest in revealing truths and lies. I've been studying and speaking, as I said, on these topics for quite some time. And I grew up eating a standard American diet. I had health issues from a very young age, which affected me throughout adulthood. And that sort of drew me, I think, in this direction. I had autoimmune issues, IBS, ulcerative colitis, which led me to be at high risk of colon cancer in my mid-50s. And then Epstein-Barr virus, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, arthritis, nothing unusual, just the normal smorgasbord of what we're all dealing with today. And much later in life, I began learning about the factors contributing to those issues. And that enabled me to recover and keeps me curious. Seeing what has been happening the last 3 years to so many others fuels me to get loud now, because it's not stopping. You know, we need to know what's happening. And the main underlying contributing factor in all of the issues that I dealt with and that people are dealing with today is glyphosate. For many years, we only had Monsanto's word to go on. Now we have scientific proof as well as court hearings on our side. So what is glyphosate and where did it come from? Well, glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup, which has become the poster child for pesticides. Although it's used as a weed killer today, glyphosate was first patented by the Stauffer Chemical Company in 1961 as a chelating agent to strip mineral deposits off pipes and boilers in commercial hot water systems. When someone poured some on the ground and it killed a patch of grass, they had the bright idea that it could be used as a herbicide. It was also a component in Agent Orange that was used in the Vietnam War. I'm 72 and I remember the Vietnam War because many of my friends and friends of friends went off to fight. An awful lot of them didn't come back, but of the ones who did come back, a lot of them ended up with Parkinson's or leukemia because of the exposure to Agent Orange when they were soldiers. Then in 1968, Monsanto patented glyphosate as the herbicide and for use in agriculture, but then it patented a third time in the early 2000s as an oral antibiotic. So think about that, spraying crops with antibiotics. So all of these applications as a chelator, a herbicide, and an antibiotic play a role in the chemical's unique and diabolical impact on human health. It's been called the silent molecule. Now, with some very clever advertising, Roundup became a household name, enticing people to use this weed killer. And I remember neighborhood competitions in America to see who could have the best lawn. And the best lawn was just the greenest rectangle of grass with no flowers, no weeds, not like a lovely British meadow, but just a patch of grass. But the farmers loved it even more because fewer weeds meant higher yields. The spraying a second time, especially for wheat farmers who benefited from drying their wheat out so they could get it into production faster. Glyphosate does not wash off, as Monsanto would like us to believe, and it does not dissipate. It penetrates the crop. And when we eat food that has been sprayed, no matter how the food is processed or cooked, we are consuming glyphosate, which we'll look at. So I want to make a special mention that you cannot wash glyphosate off with vinegar. I'm hearing far too many healthcare professionals advise their clients to wash their produce in vinegar to wash off the pesticides. As you'll see shortly, that just doesn't work. And countries where the growing season is short, the goal is to force the crop to ripen before the frost sets in. This practice is also increasing in part because farmers have learned that synchronizing plants to go to seed at the same time improves the yield. Now I'm quoting Dr. Stephanie Seneff, as I mentioned. So she says, Monsanto has boasted glyphosate as remarkably safe because its main mechanism of toxicity affects a metabolic pathway in our plant cells that human cells don't possess. This is what makes glyphosate so effective in killing plants, while in theory, leaving humans and other animals unscathed. That has proven to be wrong. So glyphosate damages cells that increase something called oxidative stress, which is linked to immune dysfunction and diseases. So I have a couple of images here taken from PubMed, which is the National Library of Medicine, and typed in oxidative stress, and you can see the results, 303,000 studies on oxidative stress. That figure today is 309,000, so it's continuously going up. And the timeline started in the late 1990s. So you might be wondering, well, is oxidative stress really real? And is 303,000 really a significant number? Why isn't it millions if oxidative stress is so important? Well, as a comparison, I typed in vitamin C, and 73,000 studies on vitamin C, and their timeline started with 1921. So you can see the scientific community is really getting on board now with studying oxidative stress and its link to diseases. So our cells produce reactive oxygen species, also known as free radicals, during normal metabolic processes. At the same time, our cells also produce antioxidants to neutralize the free radicals. Our body has the ability to fight, and it was designed to heal. In order to stay healthy, our cells need to have a balance between the free radicals and the antioxidants. Oxidative stress happens when there are too many free radicals for the antioxidants to neutralize. Exposure to environmental pollutants can also contribute to oxidative stress, as do medications, EMFs. I think we're surrounded by new toxins all the time. And scientists say that disease is 10% hereditary and 90% environmental. So that gives us a lot of control. So why do we need to exercise our control over glyphosate? And how do we balance the free radicals? Well, glyphosate's effect on plants is to disrupt the shikimate pathway, the metabolic pathway that Monsanto said humans don't have. Well, plants use the shikimate pathway to produce the amino acids tryptophan, tyrosine, and phenylalanine, which are the precursors to proteins, vitamins, and other kinds of bioactive substances, such as hormones and neurotransmitters. When glyphosate disrupts the shikimate pathway, it kills the plant. The shikimate pathway is a communication pathway. When the cells stop communicating, the host dies. So Monsanto researchers and other industry-funded scientists say that because the shikimate pathway does not exist in human cells, glyphosate doesn't pose a risk to us. Well, you are probably aware that our bodies have good bacteria all over, as you can see illustrated here. We have bacteria in our eyes, our nose, our ears, our mouth, all over our body and inside our body. Those bacteria outnumber our human cells 9 to 1, a staggering number. And those bacteria have a shikimate pathway. So let that penny drop. Where is the highest concentration of bacteria in our bodies? Well, that's in our gut. And where is 70% of our immunity? Well, that's also in our gut. And where are most of our neurotransmitters? They're in our gut, 80% of them. Glyphosate kills anything that possesses the shikimate pathway, and that includes our microbiome. Microbes we rely on for providing us with nutrients and aiding our digestion and maintaining a healthy gut barrier, promoting the development of a healthy immune system. Think gut cell junctions. They are mesh junctions designed to keep the good stuff in and the bad stuff out. Well, glyphosate destroys those. And of course, damage to the soil. Many of my clients come to me and say they're gluten intolerant, and I suggest that they are glyphosate intolerant, and there are ways that we can check that quite easily. So how bad is oxidative stress then? Well, it's been linked to neurological problems in children and a host of other disorders. In fact, hundreds of diseases are associated with high levels of oxidative stress and a decreased ratio of glutathione, which is our body's master antioxidant, which our body produces. It is the key in regulating oxidative stress, and catalase is another antioxidant our body makes, which is important for regulating the damage from oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is linked to mitochondrial dysfunction and damage to cell membrane fatty acids. Glyphosate exposure decreases glutathione levels in the blood, brain, heart, liver, and kidneys. And we'll look at the relationship between glyphosate and glutathione in just a minute. Glyphosate is considered so safe that no U.S. governmental agency tests for it, and that's in the US. And I dare say that's probably the same for the UK. I don't know, but perhaps someone from the PFFA can give us some guidance on that, because if not, we need to change it. So we know what glyphosate is used for and the harm it does. Where are we likely to find glyphosate other than our food? Well, it's in the rain, which is might be a bit difficult to understand, but it's in our water supply, cotton and clothing, and of course our soil. It's also dispersed into the air, which means we could potentially breathe it into our lungs. So Dr. Seneff had the air over major airports tested in late 2020 and found glyphosate there as well. Well, you might be asking, well, is glyphosate a gas? Well, it's not. Well, how would it get into the air? Well, major airlines powered by biodiesel, so that they're green and eco-friendly, were burning matter that was not organic. That really, really shocking. So even if you eat an organic diet, you're still likely to be exposed to glyphosate from runoff, wind, air. I did take a little excerpt from her study, well, several of them on this slide. In the top right says, glycerin is a major waste product of biodiesel production, and it's the byproduct of glycine and propylene glycol, or e-cigarette additives. Symptoms seen in vaping illness match closely with symptoms of COVID. If you would like to have a copy of her study, I think it's about 18 pages, I'll be happy to send that to you. And many communities around the UK have banned glyphosate, but those bans are for municipal use only. Many of our neighbors are still spraying, and I see people spraying in front of their houses regularly, especially this time of year. I saw a massive tractor with spray arms dousing a field next to a lady I was going to visit just outside Axminster. And she'd been suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome for years. So no wonder she's been so ill. And the companies that manufacture and sell glyphosate are so powerful that they have convinced government authorities and many research scientists that glyphosate is so safe that they don't bother to investigate whether it could be partly to blame when bees and butterflies start dying in alarming numbers. Between lockdowns a couple of years ago, I was on my way to meet a friend for coffee, and I passed by a gorgeous field of rapeseed. And being an artist, I've always wanted to paint it, but couldn't really get close enough. So I pulled in, got out of my car, and walking around, and the silence was deafening. I realized I could not see or hear a single bee. And 15 minutes later, I was at Barrington Court having coffee with my friend, and we were greeted by the glorious sound of bees, all shapes and sizes. So it's pretty obvious. And if bees are smart enough to avoid it, shouldn't we? So let's look at another way glyphosate affects humans. Well, an explanation is that glyphosate is substituting for the glycine in glutathione, preventing the glutathione from functioning properly. I mentioned glutathione is made by our body and is our master antioxidant. Well, glyphosate substitution for glycine in glutathione synthesis would kick off a futile cycle of synthesis and degradation. Glutathione is a stored form of sulfur. It's a little bit sciencey, but I think you'll get the gist of this. One of the 3 amino acids, cysteine, is a sulfur-containing amino acid, and all 3 amino acids in glutathione are critical for sulfate synthesis. So in addition to its role as an antioxidant, glutathione is a reserve resource to supply critical nutrients needed to produce sulfate when sulfur levels in the blood become deficient. This chain of reactions goes one step further to enable vitamin C, a ascorbate version, to work as an antioxidant. Reduced glutathione can react with oxidized ascorbate to convert it to a beneficial form that has antioxidant properties that the body can use. Oxidized ascorbate without the help of glutathione can actually be dangerous. So we need to boost in multiple antioxidants, our superoxide dismutase, catalase, glutathione, to enable vitamin C. We're so concerned about GM food, and we're walking around in GM bodies. But we have some good news. Glutathione is like a thermostat in every cell in our body. And I mentioned before, our body makes glutathione. And we have this illustration here from Dr. McCord, who is the founder of free radical biology. So he shows those 3 compounds and how they're utilized to make glutathione. So we see glycine is in the center of the cell, and then we see cysteine and glutamate need to be added to the picture. We have this little yellow circle on the left is an Xe- protein. It orchestrates a lot of this, so it's letting cysteine into the cell, but only when there's glutamate in the cell to exchange and add to the glycine. So imagine Imagine glyphosate is replacing the glycine in the cell. It's just staggering to even get my head around. But let's now, enough of scientific terms, let's speak some common languages of disease. So autism is associated with a long list of reoccurring health problems such as gut dysbiosis, hormone imbalances, mineral deficiencies, heavy metal poisoning, metabolite disturbances, and inflammatory markers. The autistic brain has high levels of oxidative stress. Aluminum is neurotoxic, so when it's injected into the body as an adjuvant in a vaccine, it is engulfed by macrophages that transport it to the stressed tissues, including the brain. There's no question that glyphosate is contributing to the rise in autism. But it's also possible that glyphosate facilitates aluminum transport across the blood-brain barrier. Catalase, another antioxidant that I mentioned previously, is produced throughout the body, is reduced by 40% in people with autism. And glyphosate disrupts our body's natural defenses to regulate cholesterol. And they found that Roundup had a damaging effect on sperm motility. Mitochondria are our energy generators in every cell in our body. They are so important, they even have their own DNA. Glyphosate is playing a role in disrupting our mitochondria, and damaged mitochondria are found in many, many diseases, especially cancer cells. And when glyphosate substitutes for glycine, it leads to a defective protein that may not even be released from the cell that synthesized it. Proteins are the workhorses of the body, and proteins can also be hormones or signaling molecules themselves. So when the protein misfolds, the body's immune cells mistake it as a foreign protein and develop antibodies to attack even healthy versions of the protein. Food proteins can also have glyphosate embedded in them, which would make it harder for them to break down in the gut. And finally, glyphosate also suppresses our innate immune system. We've also seen a sharp rise in chronic fatigue syndrome, which I know I had firsthand experience of that and was bedbound for some years with chronic fatigue. But it's considered a mysterious condition that baffles healthcare professionals. Well, it certainly baffled my doctor because he said there was nothing he could do to help me, which was a real turning point in my life when I had to start thinking outside the box and find a resolve. So chronic fatigue syndrome first emerged after glyphosate was introduced into the food chain. So there's a big clue. Now this part's a bit difficult. A review paper published in 2020 examined a large body of peer-reviewed research on glyphosate with a specific focus on looking for evidence that glyphosate is an endocrine disruptor. It found glyphosate exhibited 8 out of 10 key characteristics of an endocrine disruptor. Among other effects, glyphosate has been found to disrupt thyroid hormone regulation, to suppress testosterone synthesis, to inhibit a critical developmental enzyme known as aromatase that converts testosterone to estrogen, and then to act as the estrogen receptor to enhance estrogen signaling in breast cancer cells. Even at exposure levels measured in parts per trillion, glyphosate stimulates hormone-sensitive breast cancer cells to grow unchecked. Well, you might think, well, you'd have to be exposed to a lot of glyphosate for it to have an effect. Well, a part per trillion is 1 drop of water in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Glyphosate primes mammary cells to become more sensitive to well-established carcinogens, increasing the risk that these toxicants will induce cancer. When human liver cells are exposed to low doses of glyphosate, similar to what we're exposed to in the environment, DNA damage ensues. Human white blood cells exposed to glyphosate also suffer from DNA damage, including a gene that suppresses cancer tumors, the p53 gene. Destroying the protective benefit of the p53 promoter gene paves the way for invasive leukemias and lymphomas and many, many others. So at the end of my talk, I have a study on the p53 promoter gene that was conducted by the American Cancer Society that found a specific NRF2 pathway activator regulates the p53 gene. So I can share that study with you. And collagen is considered the body's scaffolding. It's a protein that provides structure to the bones, ligaments, skin, and tendons. Asian cultures recognize collagen as the foundation of youth. Because every third amino acid is a glycine, collagen is tremendously vulnerable to glyphosate substitution. Collagen is the most abundant protein in your body. It provides strength for your muscles, skin, cartilage, blood, bones, ligaments, eyes, and brain. And glycine is the main amino acid in collagen, so very important. And unfortunately, the liver is also one of the organs that is most vulnerable to glyphosate. A large number of studies have demonstrated that glyphosate is markedly toxic to the liver, and that the liver is one of the first organs to be affected by glyphosate exposure. Because the liver's responsibility is to clear toxins and toxic chemicals from the blood, its exposure to glyphosate is higher than that of other organs. Glyphosate disrupts cytochrome P450 enzyme, which depletes the liver of glutathione, induces oxidative stress, which then can lead to mitochondrial impairment and mitochondrial DNA damage, and causes fatty liver disease. Glyphosate also induces apoptosis, which is a form of programmed cellular death. Glyphosate is not a free molecule circulating in the tissue. It is an integral part of Frankenstein proteins that replace the original. And that, as well as everything else, is from Dr. Stephanie Seneff. So I don't know about you so far, and I don't know what I find most disturbing. The fact that glyphosate damages the shikimate pathway, or that glyphosate hijacks the glycine molecule in our cells, our vital cells, or that no one is talking about either of these. So now we'll get on to some better news, some good news. So Dr. Seneff talks quite a bit about glutathione in her book. She refers to it as glorious glutathione. It is one of the most important molecules in our body that we need to stay healthy and disease-free. And it's one that most people, even many healthcare professionals, have never heard of. And that's our wonderful glutathione. Stephanie Seneff describes it as nature's mop. So like a mop, glutathione combines with toxic molecules and ushers them out of the body. It also mops up free radicals that would otherwise damage tissues. So present in the liver, in large amounts, glutathione is assembled from 3 amino acids, as we talked about: glutamate, cysteine, and glycine. So glutathione protects liver cells against oxidative damage. The liver, as it goes about its business of detoxifying fat-soluble toxins and toxic chemicals, needs lots of glutathione to keep it safe. In the immediate presence of glyphosate, the body will make more glutathione, but in the long term, glutathione levels will fall and become depleted, which leaves us in a bad way. But detox is getting talked about a lot. It's a big buzzword today, isn't it? Everyone's seeking to detox, and rightfully so, with teas, potions, cleanses, etc. But usually they only detox to retox. Detox today is no longer an event. Detox is a lifestyle, and nothing detoxes like glutathione. Think of it, a Japanese doctor described it like as a guard in every cell in your body. And it's always watching out for any abnormality like a bad bacteria or a virus or a cancer cell. And when it detects them, it attaches like sticky flypaper, chucks them out of your body. And that is just fantastic news to do that, but it gets even better. Glutathione then goes back and repairs the damage. So think about it. Without that repair, the cell is still damaged. And toxins don't stay away just because you've removed a few. We are bombarded by toxins now 24/7. And of course, we can't see, smell, or taste them. But with glutathione going back and repairing that damage, now when your cells start to replicate, instead of making a copy of a diseased cell, now it can make a copy of a healthy cell. And that's where the healing really begins. And glutathione repairs damage even in your DNA, which we'll see. So let's look at conditions associated with low levels of glutathione so you can really get a picture of how important it is. So look at these issues: ADHD, Lou Gehrig's disease, Alzheimer's, anxiety, autism, bipolar, dementia, depression, migraines, MS, Parkinson's, schizophrenia even, and some immune issues, asthma, lupus, Lyme's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, viral infections, a host of cardiovascular issues and cancers, and arthritis and chronic fatigue, Crohn's, fibromyalgia. So many of these I've dealt with, hyper and hypothyroidism and heavy metal toxicity, on and on and on. Why in the world doctors don't test for glutathione really is beyond me. So we've seen conditions associated with low levels of glutathione, but what about detoxing before a condition manifests? Especially in the case of glyphosate. So you want to detox glyphosate before it has a chance to get into your cells. Also now detoxing graphene oxide is another one added to the list. They're just more added to the list all the time. The good thing is your body knows, glutathione knows, so we don't have to know exactly what we're exposed to. Glutathione will get rid of it if we don't need it. And arsenic, mercury, lead, cadmium, chromium, aluminum, and the list is just endless. Now this is a very interesting slide. So this I only found this year, and it's it's showing the benefit of glutathione. Endogenous deficiency of glutathione is the most likely cause of manifestations and death in COVID patients. Where did we ever hear about that in the last 3 years? Well, we had a little bit of a hint of it from Dr. Luc Montagnier, who was a Nobel laureate virologist who was interviewed on Italian television. I think it was April 2020. And he was interviewed by an Italian doctor who said, how do we prepare ourselves against this virus that's coming at us? And he said, boost your immune system, lower your oxidative stress, and increase your glutathione. And he was silenced pretty quickly. Just one little addition on glutathione, because telomeres were talked about a lot in recent or past years. So glutathione repairs caps, which are the telomeres found at the end of our chromosomes. So if the cap is damaged, our DNA can unravel. Each of our cells has its own DNA. So inside each cell are our mitochondria, which also have their own DNA. So a major protector of our DNA is glutathione. And studies have been done testing supplementation of glutathione, which got really popular over the last 3 years. And when was it hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin were being banned, that got a lot of people's attention because we were seeing that contrasted with it being very effective against COVID. So then I guess it was a little over a year ago, NAC was going to be banned. So people bought it in droves. They thought, well, if they're going to ban it, it must be good for something. It's only a precursor to glutathione. So if you have some of the issues listed on that low glutathione chart, it's going to do next to nothing. It's not going to do what you're expecting it to do. So the European Journal of Nutrition published studies measuring different types of supplemental glutathione in a tablet for pill form, which the molecule is quite large, so it doesn't metabolize very well, but also intravenous, which is great. Intravenous glutathione gets really good results really quickly, very expensive, inconvenient as you can imagine, and the effects last for maybe a couple of weeks. And but they found with supplementing glutathione, whatever was increased, your levels were increased by 10 to 40%. So here's a study on that NRF2 pathway that I mentioned, and this boosts your body's own mechanism of creating glutathione by at least 300%, whilst also boosting your superoxide dismutase and your catalase and regulating hundreds and hundreds of your genes. So here we are at the end, and that is bang on 40 minutes. Phew. So I will just say, take a screenshot of this if you like. I will take questions after this. So if you would like the link to download and read Dr. Senov's book, free for 30 days, or if you would like the study on the P53 cancer gene with NRF2 activation, or if you'd like Dr. Senov's study on the air over the major airports, or if you would like details on activating your own NRF2 pathway, which boosts the glutathione and the antioxidant systems, you can find me on Facebook. Just send me a friend request, or find me on WhatsApp. You can find me on Instagram, or just email me. So I will stop screen sharing. Let's see. Where is it? There we go.
Wow, Patricia, I've learned so much. I feel slightly scared, but that's what happens when you find out kind of information like this in one go. You know, you have to take it in and digest it. But what I'm getting from this is that we really need to reconsider our diets and looking at organic foods and looking at how we're feeding ourselves and our families, and then possibly alongside that looking at supplementation as well to try and counterbalance those environmental factors that we can control less.
Yes.
Yeah, fascinating. Vicky, did you want to, as a nutritional therapist, I'm just a bit like, I've been like a rabbit in headlights for the last 40 minutes. Such easy to digest information for a new beginner like me, Patricia. So thank you so much.
I thank you for that feedback, because I tried to distill it down, you know, and but I don't want to leave out those few important points.
Some of the science goes over my head, I must say. I never did that well at science at school. I was more of an arty-farty type, but I definitely got the gist. So thanks. Vicky, any kind of thoughts from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it was excellent, as you say, to get those main points across. I think it's really interesting that so many people hadn't really heard of NAC, or NAC as I call it, until recent events. So about 3 years ago, I really started investigating that, and now we took it for a particular reason, but then you start to investigate it even further and realize how much of an effect it can have on all of these different items that you're talking about. And I think so, like, what I would say, or what the question for you really, Patricia, is what foods, or how can people best avoid it? I mean, obviously we can't avoid it, it's just everywhere, like you say, and it's even in organic food, because it obviously dissipates across to the other fields, you know, because it gets spread by the air. But which are the worst foods, perhaps, that I know you talked earlier about gluten and people becoming gluten intolerant. So what is the effect there, and how can people avoid it?
Well, that's a really good question, because wheat is like number one, because it gets sprayed as a desiccant, not just, you know, for the weeds in the beginning. So and we've seen so many people stopping eating bread. Oh, bread's the big enemy now. Well, bread was a staple for most of human civilization. The problem is not the bread. The problem is the flour, which is the distill it back, and the problem is the wheat. And of course, the Industrial Revolution had a big role to play in that. But it is really the glyphosate, which is giving people the tummy problems. And over lockdown, when people were held captive in their homes, I taught sourdough bread classes online. So we get the whole family because they're all bored to tears. So yeah, they're going to all be on. And you get the dad and the mom and the kids. And one particular family had 3 children. Each child had its own food sensitivity. Can you even imagine? So, but the kids mucked in, they made the bread. They could all eat the bread without any problems. And then of course we made sourdough crumpets, sourdough crackers, and all this stuff. So they were in fact eating this and getting on very well.
I feel a workshop coming on here, Patricia. I think we need to talk about this. Sorry, just have to get
know
that
where
in
we're going to be going to Martalk, aren't we, in September? And yeah, there's so much. There's just so much. And again, that's a lie. So people are missing out on a whole food group, and it's the sourdough bread that's made from the organic. I mean, that's a whole nother talk. I'm going to get started now and never stop. But also chickpeas get sprayed a lot. And of course, everybody loves hummus.
Mm.
So you just have to make your own, unless it specifically says it's organic. Lentils get sprayed a lot, and I love lentils. And you look at the size of a lentil, it's just like you're just chucking glyphosate. You can find organic lentils. So the Soil Association is a great resource for learning about what foods are sprayed. Apples, no fewer than 15 pesticides sprayed on a single apple. Think Snow White. And you can't peel it. Don't peel the apple thinking to get rid of the glyphosate. Yeah. No, we've seen how it's in the integrity of the crop. So I went to Valencia a couple of weekends ago, and walking by the produce shops were just, everywhere. The smell of that fresh produce, and because it ripens, it's picked when it's ripe. And I don't think they spray an awful lot. I don't think they do. I can't substantiate that, but we're doing so much damage to our food. So yes, prioritizing the foods that are get sprayed, and buying those organically. And carrots, organic carrots are cheap as chips and so good for us. And organic broccoli, and the more we buy, the more will be available.
I think
sorry.
No, go on, Vicky, go on.
I think there's another couple of crops as well that I think oats and both soy, and unfortunately, like soy, especially, if you're eating any kind of processed foods, then they just put it in everything now, and most of it is GMO, unless you're specifically looking for the non-GMO. So I think it's really, really in so much of our processed food, and like you say, we need to be looking specifically for certain foods, and then always minimizing our exposure by going organic. And and people say it's more expensive, but you have to kind of weigh up, well, what do you want to be eating?
What's the cost in the long run? And we're seeing that list of illnesses they're just common now. We don't die of old age anymore. But if we ask, like, if I'm in Lidl or Tesco and I see the produce manager, I'll thank them, like, you've got 4 varieties of organic apples now. Thank you so much. And instead of bashing, thank them for that, and encourage people to buy more, and we will make a difference. Tesco had 4 different choices for organic apples, and that's recent.
Yeah,
that's fabulous.
I think is it Beta? I think Beta, do you want to take yourself off mute so that you can ask your question?
Thank you. I was waiting for my time. Hi, thank you very much, Patricia. Really brilliant thing. I'm also an NT. I also deal with other nutritional therapists, also with other disciplines. One of the things that I recently discovered, how ubiquitous glyphosate is, that when I heard from one of my clients, the large-scale farm in Buckinghamshire, that apparently wheat grown as food for the animals cannot be sold unless it's treated with glyphosate. So it's coming into the food chain through the animal foods as well. And I mean, apart from dealing with the effect on the person, I'm also shocked at how widespread it is. And just one thing I wasn't clear about: how does sourdough bread making get rid of glyphosate? I mean, obviously, using organic flour as such.
Yes, well, the sourdough process does not get rid of the glyphosate. You have to start with organic whole grain, and the best flour is sprouted for 24 hours, and that modifies the starch. And then you dry it and you stone grind it, which is marvelous for your digestion. It takes a couple of hours to digest it and extract the nutrients. But then the sourdough, the fermentation process of about 3 days modifies the gluten
Yes,
so significantly that even celiacs, most celiacs, about 90–95% of celiacs that we've tested so far, are able to tolerate it and thrive on it.
That's wonderful.
But it's not gonna get rid of the glyphosate. But
any idea of whether any pressure groups or lobbies have been talking to the government or anyone else? I mean,
that's what I want to know. I want to know. I know Honiton banned, where I live, banned glyphosate March a year ago, but they're not educating anybody. And you know, I put the fact that I had this talk coming up on next door, and got a real bashing from some residents, because it's, you know, like 5 to 10 mile radius around where I live. It's shocking how many people think, oh, we have so many people to feed now, we have to spray glyphosate. Thank you for glyphosate, Monsanto.
That's a really interesting question, because I think glyphosate was sold on the fact that it will increase yield, won't it? That was one of the ways that it was sold. But am I right in thinking, Patricia, that it actually does not increase yield?
Well, I think you probably need to define that.
Yeah.
That farmers say it increases the yield because they can dry it out faster and get it into production faster. Is that increasing yield? That's just more, sounds like a convenience for them.
Yeah.
I don't see how that's increasing yield. And then forcing them to go to seed all at the same time, that's not really, they're not getting more from it. They're just getting to organize their calendar.
Yeah, it's convenience, as you say. I do have one other question as well. Are the ingredients the same in the US as they are in the UK? Because I have seen some adverts with Roundup saying that glyphosate free. So
I was hoping somebody'd ask that question. I don't trust Monsanto an inch. So I always look for read between the lines stuff. In fact, Michael Campbell, who's on here, is a longtime friend of mine in America, and we were having that conversation today. Allegedly, the glyphosate free in Australia lists vinegar as the ingredient. So then why wouldn't you just go buy vinegar?
Yeah.
So there's something else. And they have all the money in the world, so they have all the power in the world. They control the labeling. Arsenic is one of the ingredients in Roundup, and it's not listed on the label. It's in the inert ingredients. And my understanding of arsenic is it's not inert, but they don't have to disclose things. They don't have to say. And it, you know, I was talking about glyphosate tonight. Roundup is far worse.
And arsenic has been coming up in some of the autistic kids that I look after a lot. And the moment you start mopping it up, obviously together with all the other toxins that go along the way, aluminium and the lot, the levels drop, their behavior shifts like nothing.
There's so much that can be done. I work with a lot of autistic children, and it's just remarkable to see them speaking, and you know, the frustration levels are almost gone, and they're behaving, integrating, and you know, it's just this nonsense does not have to be that we're dealing with, but you've just
So I'd
got.
like to connect with you, Patricia. Perhaps we could pool resources and do something more.
That would be great. Where were you located?
I'm in South Bucks, west of London, or north of Windsor.
North, okay.
North of Windsor, so it's west of London.
Okay, well, maybe not, but anyway, yes, we could hop on a chat, or.
And can I just say,
email you.
Can I just say, I think, you know, let's definitely do something following on from this with the PFFA, but also the People's Health Alliance as well, because, you know, we are under one umbrella, our sister organisation. It makes sense to pull some members of the team over and really get some of this out there and start talking about it. Patricia, you're quite right. Raphael had a question in the chat here. How can we trust something is really organic nowadays, with the future scandal of Appeal being classed as organic? I'm sure everyone's aware of Appeal covering that's been put on fruit and vegetables to make it last longer, but don't worry, it's organic. And if you've not heard about it, please look into it. APEEL. I've been told some seeds are sold as organic when they're not, such as heritage or other seed labeling. Is there a trick to make sure it's really good for us? I guess it comes down to money, right?
Well, yes, money is the backbone of everything. To get genuinely organic seeds, you'd have to know somebody who's Amish. That's what my understanding is, that no one can touch the Amish. Their seeds are passed down from generations and to generations, and no one can. They're you know, nobody can touch them. And so if you have access to an Amish farmer and get some seeds from that would be the best. The rest, it's a toss-up, you know.
It does help if you grow your own, I think, you know, and we do have some amazing seed companies in the UK, such as Real Seeds and Vitality Seeds, who are collecting and have their own seed banks, and their members collect it themselves, and there's lots of information on that, part of the Gaia Foundation. If you look up seed sovereignty, we're doing a huge campaign throughout the whole of August on seed saving and how we can become a little bit more food independent when growing our own, but obviously there's only so much we can provide ourselves. So I think it's a fair question, Raphael. I think that organic standards and accreditation is quite stringent, maybe even too stringent and too bureaucratic in some ways. It's a question to ask, and I guess that's where getting to know your local producers and really getting to speak to the people in your community who provide you your food will provide you with some more confidence, perhaps, than maybe a supermarket chain. I don't know if anyone else wants to respond to that.
I think it's worth noticing, and I'm by no means any kind of expert at all when it comes to seeds, but there is a big difference between organic seeds and heritage seeds. And heritage seeds are ones that haven't been tampered to. It's my understanding, my limited understanding, that heritage seeds are ones that have not been tampered with in any way. And by the very nature of the name, heritage, they're actually ones that go back, whereas so many see, and as Sam said, August is the month where we'll actually be talking so much about that. But I think, and again, when you come down to Appeal being classed as organic, I think, again, they're doing that because it's made from natural materials rather than, but it's not, that's kind of double speak to try and put you off the track of what they're actually doing. So those are very, very different items to be thinking about. So seeds is a whole different story, but the appeal, I think we all know where that's going.
There's just
Yeah.
no, we're not falling for that. Is Patrick Holden in the PFFA? He is.
Sorry, he's connected more to the PHA, but we are one. You know, we're just different arms of the alliance, really. And yes, he is connected. I don't think he's an ambassador as such, but he's definitely closely connected and talks with the core team quite regularly.
I'm going to the College of Medicine and Integrative Health conference. Are you going?
No, not me, but we work with them really closely at PHA. Yeah.
I'm so relieved. So maybe we could get some sort of input from him and some guidance. And he's very well, you know, we can ask people till we're blue in the face, but when you ask somebody that you trust, then you don't have, you know, we're all busy, you know, we get tired trying to run down and find, you know, truth somewhere. But if you ask Patrick Holden, then you can really cut to it. And yeah, there's so much we can do, and getting together, because there's more of us than there are of them, and we can make a definite impact. But we've got all these scattered little bits of information, and we need to consolidate some stuff and have some sort of a little targeted attack. I don't want to say attack, but the you mentioned the organic accreditation. When I was outside Langport, I was spoiled for choice for farms that didn't spray. And if they said they didn't spray and locals knew that they didn't spray, that was good enough. That's good enough. And of course, there's Pitney Farm that has been organic for probably decades. And
you can check out Community Supported Agriculture, CSA. They are a great organization to check for local veg box schemes that usually you know, they do have they're very particular. They work closely with the Soil Association. They're very particular about the methods that their market gardeners use. So that would be a good place to go for. And I'll send you the link, Patricia. It feels like we've got a part 2 to this, or even maybe a part 3 if we start talking sourdoughs. So Patricia, please, thank you. I just want to say thank you so much. If there's any more questions, if anyone would like to raise their hand or pop a question in the chat, but for me, it's been absolutely fascinating, and it feels like we've just touched the tip of an iceberg, and I think we'll be working more closely with you and anybody else that wants to help us perhaps get more of this message out. Beata's just put in the chat, Riverford Organic. Yeah, I couldn't praise them highly enough. Ale and Cole for organic food, so they're national food delivery companies, fantastic. And you can also check out the Open Food Network. They've got an excellent mapping tool where you can find local producers, and most of those are organic. So get knowing your local producers. Check out the Community Supported Agriculture. There's lots of resources on our websites, and I think maybe look out for some more from Patricia, if that's all right with you.
Yes, there's so much. I mean, there's so many other experts, but you know, Dr. Seneff is a great introduction, I think. And then, you know, get a group together where we can ask questions and add more people in. And I think we have to have some grace for our neighbors who don't know, and just find a way to just gently introduce them to the harms of, you know, and then the proof. Yeah. Read Dr. Seneff's book if you have any questions. And you know, none of this was my opinion. It's all coming from her or Robert Kennedy Jr. or Dr. Zach Bush. You know, they're the ones in the know.
Great. Well, what we'll do is we'll put the links, any links of any references that you've made, we'll put below our YouTube channel recording, and we will also send out to anybody who registered today. So Patricia, from us at PFFA, thank you, and thank you all of you for joining us. It's always lovely to see some regular faces, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, everyone.